All right. Let me paint the picture since things are getting very messy at home, and the type of mess that won't just go away with some basic conversation. Two sons of mine live under my house here. Leo, my biological son, 17. Alex, my stepson, 19. Starting their employment about the same time, both of these men work part-time in retail. Since Alex is older, he obtained his work earlier, so it was easier for him to find something that would fit his calendar. Here, now, things get really tricky. I decided to do something that might seem a bit rigorous, but hear me out when Leo started working and bringing his own cash home. I decided to save 30% of his income, planning something with it. It was a tiny secret fund I was saving for him to use on something major, like a car down the road. Not some kind of power move, or just to hoard his hard-earned money. Though I wanted to impart to him the importance of saving, I did not go into all the reasons I was saving part of his income. I wanted it to be a surprise, something unique he would find when the moment was right. Leo understood I was cutting out his money, but he was not sure exactly what that meant. I kept it low-key and concentrated on the idea that he was learning hands-on savings lessons devoid of all the specifics. Maria, my wife, knew about my idea. Given her difficult experience with economics and former relationships, we have always kept our money apart for the most part. We therefore decided not to press too hard on combining financial concerns, and she seemed to be in line with this approach using Leo's income. A little bit ahead, Leo is about to become 18. After my cut, he has been saving what's left from his income and dreamed about purchasing his first car. He felt he had a certain amount stockpiled, and we finally came down to discuss just how much he could afford to spend on a car. I then surprised him much at that point. Thanks to the secret hoard I had been quietly contributing on his behalf, I disclosed he had far more saved than he believed. Leo responded with an invaluable quality. When he found out, he was so excited and hugged me like a bear, almost knocking the wind out of me. One of those times when all I had done felt worthwhile. But things took an unexpected turn, and not in a positive way, just when I felt I had pulled off something significant. See, Alex, my stepson, heard our talk on the automobile fund. From his vantage point, it appeared as though I was giving Leo preferential treatment and leaving him cold while saving a decent little nest fund. I understand it. He most likely felt slighted, as if he was somehow less important or that I gave him less concern. And then Maria arrived with an idea she felt would help to ease things. It wasn't enough. To make things fair, she advised me to divide Leo's vehicle fund between him and Alex. That is, I should use the money I had saved for Leo to help finance a car for Alex too. One would understate to say I was stunned, startled. I had to be direct with her. That was not an option, I told her. I reminded her that should she so want, she had had the same opportunity to act in this manner for Alex. She might have saved money for him, as I did for Leo. She knew exactly what I was doing, and she never suggested I should include Alex at any moment. Suddenly, though, it was starting to cause problems. The trouble did not stop there. Maria then said it was unfair for Leo to have a special car fund given his grandparents already paid his college fees. She said that this disparity in financial support resulted in an unfair playing field for the boys. Hence, I should use the monies to help her son, Alex, rather. Leo, meantime, is adamantly against anyone touching his car money, particularly given that the additional money I provided was totally my own choice. Leo's sentiments on the topic were rather clear. It is not like their mother helped to create this fund. And I was there, trapped in the center of this maelstrom. Maria insisted on this entire fairness thing, and Alex was naturally feeling very raw about it. Leo, in the meantime, was not moving an inch regarding the money I had set up for him, and honestly, I blamed him hardly at all. Things heated up rapidly at first. Perhaps we could work it out so that everyone's emotions were freely expressed. Maria persisted in returning, though, with the same argument. Leo's grandparents financed his college, hence, the vehicle fund situation was unfair and required leveling out. She believed Leo was already in a better place than Alex, since he wouldn't have to pay for college. I should so level the playing field by handing Alex half of the automobile money I had saved for Leo. To me, though, the car fund had less to do with justice among the lads. Just me attempting to arrange my son with something I believed would be useful. An automobile, a step towards some freedom. And Maria understood from the start what I had in mind. I was not hiding it either. It wasn't as if I was attempting to cause Alex to feel less than or divide the lads. Maria and I had decided to keep our money apart. Hence, she could have formed her own fund for Alex if she so wished. Early on, I even advised her what I was doing for Leo. But as soon as the word leaked out, everyone surrounding us began piling on. Maria's family, as well as several friends, helped in the fairness campaign. They would first joke about here and mock me about choosing my biological son above my stepson. I shrugged it off, but shortly the jokes became direct remarks and straightforward opinions, like they knew would be best for my family. Every comment cut me, and it didn't help that Maria didn't precisely intervene to stop them. Rather, she was seated right there, feeding off their remarks as though they were the encouragement she needed, and at that point, the irritation began to really mount up. Maria seemed to not know why I had been saving the money. From day one, I had been clear about it. She had no problems back then. Now, though, she was advocating this theory that we had somehow been unfair to Alex, and that cutting Leo's vehicle fund in half was the only way to set things right under rising family and friend pressure. She even began mentioning my matching Leo's deposits from my own pocket. She said there was only one more indication I was favoring one another. The thing that caught me, though, was Leo completely in favor of me devoting his income to savings. He trusted that I had his best interests in mind. Hence, he was not bothered that I was taking 30%, and he was more than delighted with the arrangement, knowing about the surprise fund. He was not some spoilt child who grew apathetic about things. I wanted him to see this as a lesson in saving, something he would carry forward in his own life. He valued that I had kept something for him. Alex, nevertheless, never saved very much on his own. He would save a bit here and there, but it was always for something he wanted immediately away. Not that he was careless or anything. He would have saved for an Apple device or a new jersey, spent it, then started over. Yes, he knew how to save, but I doubt he truly grasped what it meant to save for anything more than the next buy on his list. Something more than just what he needed. Maria, too, never really pushed him to save for the long run, even as she urged him to enjoy his youth. Leo was adamant about not sharing his automobile fund as things were. Really, I appreciated it as well. His money came from his employment. The extra money I donated was a choice. Maria's family and friends constantly adding their 2 cents has caused the tension at home to be rising to a level I hadn't expected. I never expected Maria to jump on board, and I definitely never thought it would lead to this all-out debate over who deserved more and who had the unfair advantage. And I was beginning to feel as though someone would suffer no matter the choice I made, as though I was being driven into a corner. Though I wanted to do right by both boys, at the same time I was not about to give in to what felt like a last-minute guilt trip. It simply didn't set right with me. All the back and forth had brought me to a point where I could no longer ignore it. I had to ground myself, even though it meant embarrassing Maria. Guilt or pressure from folks who didn't really know the circumstances wasn't going to persuade me. I also understood, though, that standing up could mean my relationship with Maria might never be the same. It was like one of those times when you had to pick whether to leap or stay on top of a cliff. In either case, the aftermath would have been disorganized, and the pressure to decide was just getting more intense every day. Things then started to go apart more quickly than I had anticipated. The debate over the automobile fund, which I had assumed would pass in a few days, just grew more heated. Maria wouldn't throw it aside. She would circle back to the same point every time we tried to talk, splitting the car fund for fairness or balance amongst the boys. She began tossing in other arguments that felt entirely out of left field, almost as though it were a mission for her. She even mentioned something one day that totally surprised me. Since Leo's grandparents would be covering his college costs, I should think about using part of the car fund to help Alex with his schooling instead. It was as though the goalposts moved regardless of what I said. It was first about justice with the car. Today, it was about college. She seemed to me to be merely seeking means of justification for her position. I tried repeatedly stressing that Leo's grandparents paid his tuition since they wanted to especially help him. They had decided that out of their own charity. I had not asked for or requested it, hence it was unfair to try to reroute that support elsewhere. Maria would not hear it, though. She said it was only fair Alex got some assistance since Leo was getting a free pass on educational expenses. I stopped dead in my tracks when she even advised me to ask my parents to pay some of Alex's college bills. Actually, consider that. Getting my parents to cover the tuition for my stepson? Their knowledge of him was just rudimentary. Yes, they liked Alex plenty, but asking them to pay for his schooling was asking far too much. Almost silent, Maria looked at me and asked, "Are you seriously recommending that I ask my parents to cover college for your son?" She hardly flicked. She told me it was about blending the family and having Alex feel as valued as Leo, as though I were somehow responsible for making everything even between the two boys, down to the last dollar. Something changed in me at that same time. We were not only dealing with a difference of view these days, though. Maria perceived this in a way that I couldn't match with my own morals. Though it took bending over backward to make it happen, she appeared to believe it was my duty to make everything precisely the same between Leo and Alex. And to her, that was what family meant. This concept of total, uncompromising equality, regardless of all it required. I tried to him that occasionally fairness does not seem to be based on dividing everything equally. Sometimes it's about leading the lads in ways that fit their particular need and imparting different teachings. Not because Alex hadn't been taught the same savings practices, I was not willing to compromise Leo's vehicle money. But my comments seemed to pass one ear and out the other. The situation grew more tight as the days passed. Maria began including close friends and relatives even more. I would catch her on the phone, obviously mentioning me, and occasionally I would overhear snippets of calls. Words like selfish and favoritism would show up, and I knew exactly who they referred to. It was taxing, and I began to see the bad man in my own house. The turning point arrived next. Maria sat down one evening and had a focused look on her face. She told me I would get Alex a car like what Leo could afford if I truly wanted the family to remain intact. What I was hearing stunned me. This felt like she was imposing an ultimatum, a condition for keeping together, not about leveling the playing field. I was so stunned that for a moment I had no idea what to say. I simply watched her, wondering whether this was indeed happening. "I can't do that, Maria," I told her when at last my ideas came together. "Leo is not treated fairly here. She didn't take it well. This is money I saved for him, not some prize we should split evenly." I told her that wasn't true, that I'd tried my best to be a father figure to Alex, but this was going too far. Her voice rose, and she accused me of always putting Leo first, of not seeing Alex as part of my family. She seemed to be leveraging Alex to guilt me into giving up something I had labored to save for Leo. Maria's face stiffened and she replied, "If you can't see why this matters to me, then maybe we need to spend some time apart." She then bolted from the room, startled me sitting there. Though I knew things had been tough, I never dreamed it would turn up like this, a probable split brought on by money I had set aside for my son. Maria then loaded a bag and headed to live with her sister. Her leaving left the house in a wave of silence, a terrible silence like dust settled in. Leo observed, of course, but he asked not too many questions. He, in his own sense, seemed to grasp that things were tight. He heard some of Maria's furious texts on my phone and noticed them showing up. Though I attempted to protect him from much of it, he was no longer a young man. He could put two and two together. I was now in an unusual position, caught between what seemed like two distinct households. Maria and Alex, on one side, expected me to make things right by either asking my parents to assist Alex or dividing the car fund. Leo, on the other hand, simply wanted to preserve his savings and was not seeking for anything more than what I had already assured him. I wanted to keep my marriage strong, but not if it meant compromising the trust and respect I had with my kid. It was a lot to absorb, and I discovered myself debating it all awake at night. I knew things would not stop there if I gave in and got Alex a car or visited my parents for assistance. Maria's demands would never stop, and I would find myself caving into every single one, losing small bits of myself along the road. I was initially really thinking about what would happen should we fail this out of hand. Should Maria not have returned? Though it felt like the only way I could hang on to my own values, even if it meant sacrificing what I considered to be a lifetime family, it was not a consoling concept. The house seemed odd in the days Maria left. Too quiet, too empty. It was like strolling about in a memory that no longer quite fit, like things had changed just enough to make everything seem out of place. I concentrated on the daily tasks, work, housework, time with Leo. But I was under continual weight, the silent knowledge that things might never return to how they were. Then one evening, Maria called me. She sounded cool, almost too calm, as though she had practiced what she intended to say. Maybe she's ready to sort things out, to meet me midway, I thought. Rather, she struck me with something that almost sent me flying from underfoot. She answered, her voice firm but chilly. "If you want me to even think about coming back, you'll get Alex a car exactly like the one Leo is acquiring." It seemed as though all we had gone through had resulted in this one ultimatum. Not a compromise, not a chat, but a demand. It escaped my grasp. She was still striving for one thing after all the battles and disagreements, as if that were the only way things would be right. I never even tried to stifle my annoyance. "You're kidding, right?" Half chuckling at the ridiculousness, I said, "This is what it boils down to. It's about being fair," she said, her voice frigid and relentless. "You always give Leo top priority." I tried to explain to her that this was not about fairness in the manner she imagined, but rather about something entirely else. I said to her, "It's not like I'm choosing one child over the other. They are diverse people with varied demands." Maria objected since I wouldn't treat them like young children needing certain things to keep them pleased. Her voice changed from subdued to harsh. "It's more about feeling like he fits than about toys, like he is not only visiting here." Hearing her say stung not only because of what she was asking, but also because she seemed to believe I hadn't been doing already. "You are meant to make him feel like part of the family." I had made great effort to treat Alex like one of my own, and to make him comfortable. This was not about making him welcome, though. It seemed as though she was exploiting him to achieve her goals under the cover of fairness, hiding something else under that label. I stayed on my feet. "Maria, although I have done everything I could for both boys, what you are asking is unfair. This is not about juggling all things down to the last dollar." There was stillness on the other end of the telephone, a long period that stretched into something heavy and unpleasant. "You were attempting to prod me into doing something improper." She said, "If you can't see why this matters," with a finality that chilled my spine, "maybe we need this time apart." And then she hung up. With my phone in hand, I sat there repeatedly, mentally going over the exchange. She was obviously not backing down, hence, now I had to make a choice I had not wanted to make. Maria's quiet descended over the next 3 days into something like the peace before a storm. I tried to pay close attention to Leo since he sensed the strain and was handling it personally. Although he didn't probe, I felt he understood more than he let on after he had seen the books and listened to bits of our phone chats. He was caught in the middle of something he did not ask for, and it broke me to consider how all this was influencing him. We sat down one evening and discussed everything. Well, as much as I felt he required knowledge of. I assured him I would be always there for him, and that we would get through whatever happened. He said little, but he had no obligation to. He nodded gently and understandably, and in that instant I became quite proud. Growing up, my son was managing all this with a quiet maturity that let me know exactly how much he had gone through as well. Maria's needs, meanwhile, simply grew stronger. She was not merely requesting Alex a car now. She called once again one day, her tone even more frigid than before, and hurled another bombshell at me. "If you can't buy Alex a car, you should at least ask your parents to help pay for his college tuition." I was stunned. She wanted me to go beg my parents to cover Alex's college expenses. It was so disconnected from reality that, for a second, I felt I had misinterpreted her. Hoping I had heard wrong, I urged her to repeat it. But she meant every word, no differently, trying to keep my voice calm. "Maria, this is crazy," I said. Leo's grandparents offered to support him. So, you want me to ask my parents, who hardly know Alex, to pay his tuition? She did not move. That is not fair or even logical. Your parents own the money. Alex would feel more like a member of the family and they could readily assist. The topic veered from there to show you concern for him as much as Leo. I tried repeatedly stressing that this was about respect and limits rather than about money. Leo was their grandson. Thus, my parents had decided to assist him. She couldn't seem to see that expecting them to treat Alex the same was asking too much. Eventually, I came to see Maria lacked interest in knowing my viewpoint. She was intent on having what she wanted. Hence, anything I said to her was only noise. No matter the cost, she was resolved to push until she found her path. Sitting silently, I felt like a man who had been backed into a corner with no escape when I hung up the phone that evening. Something had to change, I realized at the time. This was about a basic disagreement in values, in how we perceived family, justice, and respect, not about a vehicle fund anymore. I asked a few close friends, folks I knew to be reliable in providing frank guidance. As I told them everything, they listened, startled. Hearing it out loud hit me like a ton of bricks. One of them, a good friend who had seen me through thick and thin, said what I had been avoiding. Maybe it's time to think about whether this relationship is really healthy for you. I had been trying to keep the peace and make things work for so long, but suddenly it felt as though I was merely clinging to something that was sliding farther and farther out of my reach. I could not keep bending or keep giving bits of myself for the sake of keeping things together. I experienced unusual clarity by the time I hung up. Though I didn't want to call it quits, I also didn't want to live like this, under continual pressure and manipulation into activities against my values. I considered Leo and the model I was guiding him toward. Did I want him to view his dad as someone who yielded to pressure and guilt, or as someone who stood up for what he felt to be right? I sensed the need to make a really personal decision, free from influence from others for the first time in a long time. Though I knew it wouldn't be simple and there would be fallout, I couldn't keep living in this state of continual anxiety. Whatever that meant, it was time to start running my life again. I thus formed my mind, not knowing exactly what the future contained. I had to act for Leo, for the kind of family life we wanted, and for myself. Ultimately, it was like a quiet settling over a storm, a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. I resolved myself to seek divorce. Though maybe the toughest decision I have ever taken, it was one that I knew was the only one ahead of us. Under constant pressure to bend my values to suit someone else's needs, I couldn't keep living under this weight and always fighting to keep true to them. I contacted a lawyer, started the process, and moved first. Not easy was breaking the news to Maria. She responded exactly as I expected when I told her at last. Along with a lot of accusations, there was resentment and hurt. She called me selfish and charged me with not really loving Alex or her, and of putting Leo first no matter what. Though it hurt to see everything we had created fall apart in such an ugly manner, I remained cool and tried to stay steady, knowing this was the correct road for me. Maria left me with last words as frigid as ice. "You will regret this," she advised. "You're throwing away everything we have over money." But I knew it wasn't about money. It was about respect, about knowing where to draw the line between compromise and losing myself. And as hard as it was to hear her anger and feel the weight of that blame, I also felt a sense of relief, a sense that I was finally doing what I needed to do for me and for Leo. After Maria moved out for good, the house settled into a new kind of quiet, one that wasn't tense or strained. It was just still. I spent a lot of time with Leo, talking things through and explaining what was going on and why I'd made the choices I did. He took it all in with a quiet understanding that made me realize just how much he'd matured through this whole ordeal. We talked a lot about values, about what it means to stand up for yourself, and about knowing when to say no. It felt like these were lessons not just for him, but for me as well. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding, focusing on myself and Leo, and on the simple joys that I'd missed out on in the chaos of the past year. I got back into things I'd neglected: reading, fixing up the house, even spending time with old friends. I reconnected with parts of myself that I hadn't paid attention to in years, parts that had been buried under the stress and pressure of trying to keep the peace at home. One evening, Leo and I decided to take a drive out to the lake nearby. It was a place we used to go when he was younger, just to skip rocks and sit in the quiet of nature. As we sat there watching the water ripple under the sunset, Leo turned to me and said, "Thanks, Dad, for everything." I didn't need to ask what he meant. I knew. He appreciated the decisions I'd made, even the hard ones. He understood why I couldn't let go of what mattered most, even if it meant giving up on a marriage I'd once thought would last. Life didn't magically get easy after that. There were tough days, moments when the weight of it all would hit me, and I'd wonder if I'd made the right choices. But each time, I'd look at Leo, at the young man he was becoming, and I'd feel a renewed sense of purpose. I knew I was showing him what it meant to live with integrity, to make choices that honored your values even when they came with a cost. And then, as life has a way of doing, things started to change in surprising ways. Months after the dust had settled, a friend of mine set me up with someone new, a woman named Anna. At first, I wasn't sure I was ready to open that door again, but we met for coffee, and I felt a warmth, an ease, that reminded me of how amazing it might feel to just connect with someone who understood you, no strings attached. We started seeing each other casually, no pressure, just enjoying each other's company. She respected my boundaries, recognized the hardships I'd gone through, and didn't try to push me in ways that were uncomfortable. One of the best features about Anna was how naturally she got along with Leo. She never attempted to be anything she wasn't, never sought to replace anyone, just showed up as herself. Leo took to her instantly, and it was nice to witness them laugh and interact in a way that was genuine and unforced. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start, and I began to picture a future that was a bit brighter, a little lighter. Looking back on it all, I understood that this path, as hard as it had been, had taken me to a place where I could finally breathe. I'd learned that family isn't about equal sharing or imposed fairness. It's about love, respect, and respecting the specific needs of each person. It's about understanding when to stand up for what's right and refusing to let others define what that means for you. As the seasons changed and life fell into a quieter, more serene rhythm, I found myself hopeful again. There was no more pressure to satisfy everyone, no more bending myself in ways that didn't seem right. I had my son by my side, a new partner who understood me, and a life that, while not perfect, felt honest and true. I thought about Maria sometimes, wondering if she'd found peace in her own way, if she'd come to understand why I couldn't give in to what she'd desired. But I understood that whether she did or didn't wasn't my burden to shoulder anymore. I was free, and for the first time in a long period, I felt prepared to advance. So here I am, constantly learning, continuously developing, and appreciating every day as it presents calm strength. Life teaches us things in odd ways, and occasionally the toughest decisions turn out to be the finest ones. As I look ahead, I have great respect for the road I'm on, for the future I'm building, and for the family I have decided to treasure just as they are. I will always carry the teachings from this period with me.